diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when I was 18 months old. They told them I wouldn't live long enough or live to be 12. Starting at a very young age, I would go to camp with 100 or 200 other kids with CF. And every year we'd go back, at least 50% would die. And these are kids because it was our normal. But I noticed my brothers didn't have to get chest PT where my parents would pound my chest and my back and my sides to keep the mucus cleared from my lungs, which I never really saw a future, to be honest. So interesting. So clinical trials, are obviously the reason I'm alive today and the reason we have treatments. I grew up appreciating life, and I see so many people who don't, and it really bugs me, right? Like making careless choices and not exercising. Like, you have good lungs and nothing stopping you. Like, take care of yourself, and because then you can enjoy life even more. So I would say enjoy life, the big stuff and the small stuff especially. Like, enjoy the best cup of coffee you can in the morning, the best glass of wine or beer at night. Get on that Netflix and watch it, but then during the day, just interact with people. And we're here together. So, like, just talk to people and enjoy life.
So I'm so excited to talk to you, to meet you, and to share your incredible story with everybody listening. But let's start from the very beginning. Who are you?
I'm still trying to figure out who I am. It's a long process. I think we're all kind of going through that. But I'm Emily Schaller, born and raised outside of Detroit and living in Detroit now. Diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when I was 18 months old. No family history, right? So I was the wild card, of course. I'm 41 years old now, and the healthiest and happiest I've ever been in my life, thanks to research, which I know we're going to get into, new medications, and just these days I run, bike, go to concerts, love theater, I'm a total dork, and trying to get the best out of life.
So your story is incredible because you were diagnosed with it at 18 months. So you're a baby. So this is your parents living this. And if I'm not mistaken, your parents are given your prognosis, which is.
Yeah, I literally, until this December, last December, thought it was I would not live long enough to graduate from high school. But after talking with my parents Christmas Eve, we got to spend a lot of time together. They told them I wouldn't live long enough or live to be 12, because that's what the CF doctors and care teams were seeing in Detroit. Our patients, when I was diagnosed, there were no medications, no specific FDA approved medications for CF. So prognosis was not great.
Well, and how heartbreaking for your parents. And you're a child that's basically grown up with this condition. At what point are you aware that you have an illness, and that it could potentially affect your life? Like, how do you digest that? Even because you're a baby when you're diagnosed, so you're actually growing up with this. How does that
Yeah.
experience work?
It's interesting, especially because that was the 80s, right? No computers, no access to the internet. We had every science book I would get for school. I would go right to the back page and look and see if cystic fibrosis was in there. But it was our normal, but I noticed my brothers didn't have to get chest PT where my parents would pound my chest and my back and my sides to keep the mucus cleared from my lungs, take enzymes every time I eat, get to eat a lot. So my parents were always pushing extra food on me because with CF, it's hard to gain and maintain weight. Um, I just knew something was wrong, but my parents never put it at our forefront, which I love and appreciate because I've seen it go the other way where it's this focus of everything. My
Yeah.
parents let me be a kid, right? Let me play sports and play outside in the dirt and skateboard with my brothers and just be a kid. There were
Yeah.
just extra things I had to do. And I think it was around third grade when I realized, like, things started to click, right? So I'm going to Children's Hospital every 3 months to go get a checkup and get weighed and blood work and eventually breathing tests. And then one day I was running onto the playground with my friends to play football, of course, and I started coughing. And it was a cough that didn't stop. And I had that thought in my head at that time, like, this is CF, like, this is not going away. And it was kind of like, again, we never really talked about it. We just dealt with it. And then from that point forward, I would go to CF education days at Children's Hospital and learn about CF. And the first time I heard median age of survival or life expectancy, and it was like 24, 28, and that was like, oh, okay. And then every year you'd go back and the age of survival would go up a little bit, but that started to really get tricky in my brain, right? Like, low key, I didn't talk about it with my family because I was trying to be strong and stoic and do everything on my own, but it messed with me a little bit.
Wow. So it's not until like adulthood that the
Mhm.
awareness starts to come into your mind.
Yeah.
How does that shape you then as an adult who recognizes that the fact that you are able to be so mobile and still be able
Mhm.
to participate in things, how does that start to impact, or does it impact the way you live your life?
Yeah, so I mean, my first hospitalization for a lung exacerbation, lung infection was when I was 12. So that's kind of the first time that CF really took its first big blow at me. I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, you go in the hospital and get IV antibiotics and extra chest PT. And then it would start occurring 2 times a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. So CF really started to impact my life in my teens where I would notice it, and I'm the one in the hospital, my friends aren't, right? So
Yeah.
that kinda was interesting, but we always made the best of it. Like, my friends would always come and hang out and bring food and bring movies, and we just kinda have fun with it, become really close with the staff at the hospital. Really a weird life, honestly. Like, when you consider, like, the lady bringing your lunch, one of your good friends, when
Yeah.
you're in there, it's kinda weird. But, it did impact the way I saw a future, which I never really saw a future, to be honest. So, through high school, I got into theater, like theater management and stage management, and I wanted to move to New York and go to school there, eventually work on Broadway because I love it so much. And in reality, I stayed in Detroit and went to a local college, Wayne State in Detroit. But my health was horrible. Like, my lung function was in the 50s, maybe 60s. I was in the hospital 3 to 4 times a year, um, not doing well. So I wasn't projecting a future, right? I was living in the moment,
Yeah.
and that it was hard, right? So all my friends are going to college and getting degrees, and I'm not.
Right.
But I started playing drums in a rock band to help, like, just live in the moment a little bit more. So I don't know. It was a wild time in my life up into my mid 20s.
It's crazy. That's amazing, though. You've taken something that I think a lot of people could see as very restrictive,
Mhm.
and find it very sad that they are not able to do this or this or this. And instead of you dwelling in it, you pivoted and actually pursued
Yeah.
something else, right? Being a drummer in a band.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I mean, I think that's because my parents at such a young age never held me back from doing anything. We'd go on family vacations. I would travel with friends and their families. Um, I played sports until like middle school when I didn't really grow very tall and my lung function started to decline. I couldn't keep up with the other kids. So that's when things started to differentiate. But like, I did everything, like everything that my friends did, I was able to do, which is really cool.
Let's talk about, because among other things, among other activities that you've done, and putting your mark on the world, if you will, you've also started your own foundation at some point. Huh,
Oh,
just
yeah.
that helps thousands in the community, just this small foundation. Can you tell us a bit about how you started it, where it came from, why?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, the concept was around the time when I had stopped I took a very long hiatus from college. I'm now 20 years hiatus and loving it. But it was around the time where I didn't have a career. I was working for friends' shops in the city, paying me under the table, living on Social Security disability because I was so sick to actually work. And around that time, 2004, I was speaking more about CF. I would go to the high schools and like teach 6 classes about CF. I would speak at CF Foundation events and tell my story and what it's like to live with CF. My oldest brother was in a Detroit rock band at the time. So he and I were like, let's do a concert. Let's just throw a concert here locally and raise some cash. And we did. Like the first year, it sold out just down the street here. And we both looked at each other like, oh shit, this could be something cool. Um, so we, the concert was named after one of their songs, Just Let Me Breathe, which makes sense for CF. And then we got like Rock CF was born in that era, like 2004, 2005, the idea of Rock CF. Let's empower people with CF to um, live life. And we've obviously changed our mission over the years, but it started with rock and roll music to educate and raise awareness about CF because that was like MySpace days, right? We didn't have Facebook and TikTok, and TikTok, CF's huge on TikTok now. There's a lot of big influencers. So we just wanted to reach people in the age group like 18 to 35 who would come to these rock shows to see bands. But we're also prime age to start having families, right? And
Yeah.
CF is genetic. So we wanted to just get the idea of what CF was out there. So that was kind of where we started. 2007 is when I officially founded the foundation. No clue what the heck I was doing. Um, and now, as I got into running around 2006, 2007, and my life has completely been changed by exercise. We've shifted the narrative and the mission of RockCF to be more exercise focused and really empowering patients to take advantage of these medications and pursue their dreams. And that's kind of what we've been doing since 16 years. I
Amazing.
think I'm not good at math, but I think 16 years.
Some time, just a bit of
Yeah,
time.
I'm old.
Well, isn't it crazy though? Because what I love about RockCF is it's around health and wellness. Because I think people outsiders might see CF as a very restrictive disease. I mean, it's your lungs, and if you're not running at full capacity, how can you do high intensity workouts and boxing and running? And yet, RockCF does a lot of
Mhm.
health and outdoor activities and being healthy. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's still, it is funny that it's 2023. And I think a lot of people in the US and around, well, I'd say US, know that CF is changing and people are living longer and starting families and have careers. But there are still people out there who think that like you're not going to live because that was what it was years ago. So we're kind of changing that and telling stories through our video podcast about people in the community who are and have overcome these obstacles and who are now thriving. So we love that storytelling element of Rock CF too, just to share how far we've come. And it's crazy. I mean, I started running at like 56, 60% lung function. And I thought I would go out and run 2 miles, and I made it a half a block and started coughing and spitting everywhere and walked to the next corner, ran to the next, like, no parking sign, and like did that until I could run a mile. And
wow.
my lung function improved. So the message is like exercise is great for improving lung function, maintaining lung function, airway clearance, getting the mucus out of your lungs, and like reduced my hospitalizations big time, just running and biking alone.
It's amazing the mission of the organization. And why is it important? It sounds like even before you started this, the fact that you were speaking at conferences and speaking at to school students to
Mm.
talk about CF. Why is that important in spreading awareness about CF?
Interesting. So one thing that I've always known is CF is an orphan disease, they call it. So rare disease, under 200,000. We have 30,000, but I think that number is growing as more people are being diagnosed with milder disease. Um, I felt like my story needed to be told at such a young age. I wanted to talk to people about CF and share my story. And I was like, I'm very outgoing,
Yeah.
but in school, I was very shy. Like if the teacher asked a question, I would be like, "Nah, no, I'm not speaking unless I'm told to speak." But when it came to this, I just came out of my shell and had no problem getting in front of my fellow students and other kids, just talking about it. I my parents never made me do it, and that's the best part. I see parents now like that make their kids speak, and my parents are like, "Ah, there she is doing what she wants to do," and that's been great. So I was never pressured. I think it's just what I'm born to do, right? Like
Love it.
I have this thing, we might as well make the best of it.
And so going back to the research side of it, because as you mentioned at the time of your diagnosis, there wasn't a lot happening. There was no FDA approved drug. As you said, your parents were managing it by physically helping you eradicate the mucus from your lungs and so forth. At what point did you enter a clinical trial, and did you have any awareness of what that was, or is that sort of your parents sort of guiding you through that experience? What was that like?
Yeah, that's interesting. So clinical trials, I mean, are obviously the reason I'm alive today and the reason we have treatments. Um, the CF community is very close knit, right? There's 30,000 of us in the US. And the only way to get medication is if we participate in these trials, because there's so few of us out there. Um, so I think my first trial was for an inhaled antibiotic, tobramycin, and I'm actually getting delivered tomorrow again, 30 years later. Um, and there's each CF care team around the country. Um, there's a research coordinator where he or she they look through the database and see what patients qualify for what trials. And at that time, I obviously fit the bill. I was, I think, 12. They approached my parents, I think, first, and then myself. And my parents were never like they never batted an eyelash. They're like, "Oh yeah, we'll do this for sure." Why not? I mean, why not? There's no treatments now. So if I could start on something potentially really helpful for a few months and then it gets approved and my friends can take it, like it was a no brainer to get started.
Yeah.
And then to see it, like, I think I was even on phase 2 and phase 3 of that trial. And then it was FDA approved. And that was only the second FDA approved medication for CF. So isn't that
Wow.
wild? Like 1996
Holy,
or 97, 98, that one was approved. It's crazy.
easy. Just to
I
think,
know.
looking back, that you're one of the ones who participated in it, and that's the reason it came to be.
Yeah, and it's an inhaled antibiotic that treats the Pseudomonas, the bacteria in our lungs that a lot of us have, and that bacteria causes reoccurring infections and loss of lung function. So it's a very important drug, and it's literally just inhaling a drug that was used as IV antibiotics for so long. So, and
Mm.
it's done uh, yearly, like every other month you do it. So it's a staple, right? It's like being
Great.
old with CF, I saw no treatments to now treatments that we're going to get to that are changing the world.
Well, and it's incredible because just thinking about, what's happening today in the CF community and what
Yeah.
tomorrow or 10 years from now is going to look like based on what's happening today.
I don't even know. I mean, I know where we're heading, of course. I know I'm pretty hip to the trials, as they say. But even the drugs that are out now are going to totally change the trajectory of somebody born with CF right now is going to live a very normal life.
What are some of the newest treatments being researched or developed?
All right, now we're talking. So I would say over the past 10 years, now 11 years, there have been new treatments for CF called modulators, and they treat the underlying cause of the disease. So, up until 2009 or 2010, everything we did daily for CF management was to treat the symptoms. And then in 2009 or 10, I enrolled in a clinical trial for a pill that you take that treats the underlying cause of CF. So, it helps the protein function, which in the end puts like the sodium and chloride in balance and reduces mucus and has been a total life changer for me. Like it's allowed me to start a retirement fund and I bought a house and have sold it since, but like two adult things. And really, it was about 5 or 6 years ago where I was like, I'm so healthy and my lungs are the best they've ever been in my life and I feel better than ever. Like I need to plan for a future. So the past 5, 6 years, I've been catching up to what most people start in their 20s. I started in my mid to late 30s because these medications are now so effective. As of 2019, there's a medication, a newer generation of my medication that treats about 85 or so percent of the CF population. And it is stopping, for the most part, for a lot of people, disease progression and it's now approved. The medication I'm on is now approved for babies 6 months or older. So if you start a baby on this drug, they may never need the other drugs that we're on and the other treatments because their CF will be in check. So it's completely groundbreaking and life changing, and only setting us up for what's to come next with mRNA therapy, CRISPR, and all that really fancy stuff. But this stuff is wild, and it's paving the way for other diseases to model their research also. I think Alzheimer's is dealing with small molecule therapy, and some other diseases are as well. So this groundbreaking drug for CF is also helping other diseases with their treatments.
Incredible. Sorry, repeat, when did you start the treatment with this drug?
Right. So this phase 2 trial was out of Cleveland in 2009, I think. And I was on placebo. And then 2010 or 2011, I think I started the phase 3 trial at University of Michigan. And within 5 days of taking this drug, I was a new person. It was like somebody flipped a switch on the back of my head and said, this is what you've been missing your whole life. Like, I didn't cough at all for a year and a half. My lung function went to the highest it had been. I didn't have a hospitalization for 3 years, like night and day. And that was going in with 60% lung function. So starting somebody on a medication like this that has less disease progression, they're just going to soar and be as normal as possible.
Isn't that crazy that in your
It's insane.
lifetime,
Yep.
you have seen from no treatments available to actually being able to, if you start someone early, for maximum lung capacity function
Mhm.
in
With
your life?
no drop. Yeah. So when I speak, so I do a lot of speaking around the country to CF families and CF care teams. And that's what I say. I'm like, we're going to talk about my 4 decades of CF, where the first decade and a half, zero treatments, then inhaled treatments, antibiotics to help symptoms. And now, decade 3 and 4, treating the underlying cause of CF. Like crazy. Never would have imagined it.
Do you ever pause for a moment to think to yourself, because that was really powerful what you said about the fact that you could plan for a future finally, where
Yeah.
instead of having to live in the present all the time, you could now prep for retirement. I mean, does that ever take a moment for you to be
Oh, yeah.
like, in a way, all the stuff that you've helped with research, people can now dream for
Yeah.
the future?
Yeah, I still think about it because it's scary as hell, and I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm making it up as I go. But with Roxy F, we are helping a lot of people my age or generation younger than me, maybe didn't go to college and get a skill set and a career, and we're living on Medicaid, Social Security. Now they're on these drugs, and they're so healthy, they're being forced off of them, and they have nothing to fall back on. So we have trade school scholarships that we offer to people to find a trade. You're working, you're going to school, you're getting paid, and within 6 months, 2 years, depending on the program, you have a career. Like, this is all stuff nobody ever thought about. And all of a sudden, we're like, oh, we got to help people. Like, I had to do it myself with no help, and that was scary. And I'm still figuring it out. But the least we can do is help people kind of transition from being sick to an active member of society and giving back and planning a future.
That is incredible. The more you speak about this foundation, I mean, it's the work you're all doing is incredible.
It's wild, but I
Congratulations.
love it. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're doing fantastic.
Thank you. I love it. Don't want to do anything else. So here we are.
Don't want to be in a rock band anymore? That's
I'm over it. Although every time I do see a rock concert, I'm like, oh man, that'd be
maybe,
fun.
maybe
I'm too old.
revisit it.
Okay, I'm in.
So when you've got new people that you're meeting who recently got a diagnosis or they're new to the community, I mean, there's a lot of fears around their illness. Like, what advice do you give them? What do you tell them
Yeah,
about, what are the first things they need to know?
that's a really good question. I think initially I'm like, get off the internet and don't Google, right?
Yeah.
Because you put in cystic fibrosis and prognosis, and some of it might be very outdated. Plus, with CF, there's over 1,800 or 2,000 identified gene mutations. And everybody, even you could be siblings and have drastically different disease states, right? So not everybody's story is going to be the same. Everyone's prognosis is going to be the same. So I trust your CF care team. Find one in your area. Try some others if you're not happy with who you're seeing. And I know people that have done that, but trust the doctors. They're the experts. Find adults with CF who have lived through this and ask us questions, right? Like CF is a very intense disease to manage for a lot of us. There's breathing treatments, chest physical therapy that's now delivered with a vest that I put on that shakes up with air and helps move the mucus out. Inhaled antibiotics, like I'm starting those again, and those are twice a day, 40 pills a day. It's time consuming. So my initial advice is time management. Start the kids very young, so it's never even an option for them not to do it.
Mm,
Um, and stay active, stay active, stay active. Like don't ever limit your child or yourself from doing something.
it's amazing. It sounds like, a series of habits, the practice of getting well, getting exercise, practice of taking your meds in regulation and so forth.
It's a routine. I mean, for me alone, it's getting up, running. I'm training for a marathon right now, so it's getting my morning miles in, eating, then doing my chest PT, my treatments, and then getting to work eventually. So it's like a few hours in the morning while most people are sleeping. We're up doing our thing.
Amazing. I think you're living life a lot better than like majority of people out there.
I'm
Uh,
trying.
well, and again, I don't think that illness or conditions actually define anyone, but it does change the way they see life. And so,
Oh, yeah.
knowing what you know, if you were to give life advice, what would be the best piece of advice you would give?
Don't take it for granted. Can't take life for granted. I've starting at a very young age, I would go to camp with 100 or 200 other kids with CF. And every year we'd go back, at least 50% would die. And these are kids because there were no treatments. So I grew up appreciating life and I see so many people who don't. And it really bugs me, right? Like making careless choices and not exercising. Like you have good lungs and nothing stopping you. Like take care of yourself. And because then you can enjoy life even more. So I would say, enjoy life, the big stuff and the small stuff especially. Like enjoy the best cup of coffee you can in the morning, the best glass of wine or beer at night. Get on that Netflix and watch it, but then during the day just interact with people and we're here together. So like just talk to people and enjoy life.
That is an amazing note to finish on. And Emily, I want to say, and you probably hear this often, I mean, you are incredibly inspiring. I think even just reading about you, but also having you here talking about just life in general, I think is super inspiring. What is your website? If people wanted to check you out or get in touch,
Yeah.
what is your website?
Yeah. Check us out at letsrockcf.org. We have an online shop where you can buy all of our awesome merchandise. We're actually having a May sale right now, but one of our component with RockCF is to heighten awareness through merchandise and got some sweet swag. So check it out.
Amazing. Amazing. Emily, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for being on this. And yeah, I wish you continued success and you are incredibly inspiring. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.